Hello and welcome back to the Bible Bearded and Bald. We are going to get right into the seven churches prophecies. We're going to begin, of course, with the first church, Ephesus, and we're going to see in Revelation 2 and 3 a series of seven churches that were literal historical churches, and there's an application to the day of John, the contemporary day that he lived in, regarding those churches and the different issues that they had. We're going to see two churches that had no problems, Smyrna and Philadelphia, or at least not problems doctrinally, that is, or character-wise, but we're going to see problems in the other churches, and Jesus points those out one by one. We're also going to notice that the descriptions in chapter 1, verses 12 through 20, are the descriptions that you find introduced to each of the seven churches. And as I've mentioned many times before, we're going to take the historicist method of interpreting Revelation. I would encourage you, if you haven't, to go back and look at the playlists of Introduction to Revelation, the chiastic structure of Revelation, and also the sanctuary structure of Revelation. These videos will give you a fuller picture and a better understanding of Revelation as we tackle it. You'll notice a very systematic, simple, plain, biblical interpretation of Revelation that it uses all the other 65 books to explain it. It's quite extraordinary. We're also going to see that the seven churches' prophecies are a timeline of Christian history told in advance. It's quite awesome, but we're going to begin at the beginning with the church of Ephesus, and we're going to start with verses 1 and 2. Unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write, These things saith he that holdeth the seven stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the seven golden candlesticks. I know thy works, and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil, and thou hast tried them which say they are apostles, and are not, and hast found them liars. Okay, so we see that this message is delivered to the angel of the church of Ephesus. In an earlier video, we saw that the word angel, angelos, can mean messenger or leader. So this is the leader of the church of Ephesus, probably addressed to the bishop or pastor, but it's applicable to the whole church. And here at the very beginning in Ephesus, it's important to understand its historical context. This was a main city of commerce between the East and the West, a key city in the Roman Empire. It was also the home of the Temple of Artemis, or the name Diana, as it is in some translations. She was the goddess of the hunt, of prosperity and fun, and her brother was Apollo, the Greek god of war. Her temple still stands today in ruins, and here are some pictures of it. And to think that this once was such a thriving spot on earth, people would come on pilgrimages to offer sacrifices to the goddess Artemis, and it was such a popular spot that when Paul came in with the message of Jesus Christ and saying that God is not worshipped with the works of men's hands, he is not in the form of an idol, you don't have a physical representation of him, he caused an uproar in the city because there was a lot of money being made on little silver statues of the goddess Diana or Artemis. And so there was a revolt early on in Ephesus. Things were very rough early on with the introduction of the gospel into Ephesus. And we can read about this revolt in Acts chapter 19. Let's go there. And now we turn to the inspired history of the early church written by Luke, who also wrote the Gospel of Luke, and he wrote that at the same time there arose no small stir about that way, talking about the way of Christ, the way of faith, the good news, the gospel that was being preached. No small stir, meaning there was a big riot. For a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, which made silver shrines for Diana, wrought no small gain unto the craftsmen, meaning they made a lot of money, whom he called together with the workmen of the like occupation, and said, Sirs, ye know that by this craft we have our wealth. Moreover, ye see and hear that not alone at Ephesus, but almost throughout all Asia, this Paul hath persuaded and turned away much people, saying that they be no gods which are worshipped with hands. So that not only this our faith is in danger to be set at naught or nothing, but also that this temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. People came from all over to worship this lady. And when they heard that these things, they were full of wrath, and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians. So a riot started over this situation. So the beginnings of the gospel in Ephesus started on quite a rough note. There was a riot that ensued, as we just read about in Acts chapter 19. And the history of Christianity in Ephesus also is pretty controversial, because before Paul is going on his way to Rome to be executed by Nero, he gathered the elders together and gave them a warning. And it's a very solemn warning. Already, John had been writing about this Antichrist figure. Also did Paul. He called him the man of sin. That was already starting. And this was the precursor to the great Antichrist that would come centuries later. So let's take a look at those passages in Acts 20 as Paul is about to depart for Rome. All right, before we begin Paul's speech to the Ephesians, on a personal note, you may notice that this is a different Bible. There's no markings in it. The one I was using earlier is a Bible I've had for 21 years, but I left it on the top of my Jeep when I was rushing off to preach a sermon, and it got run over by a semi truck and was torn to pieces, and pages were scattered everywhere. We gathered most of it back, and my sweet mother-in-law paid big money to have it put back together, but it's missing this one chapter in Acts and also the book of Jonah. So now I'm going to read from my other Bible that I do not put notes in. And I have other Bibles, but I wanted to use the King James for Revelation because of its precise language. And here we read Paul's departing counsel to the leaders in Ephesus. As we're going to see, they had some problems developing. He says, Take heed, therefore, unto yourselves, unto all the flock, over the which the Holy Ghost hath made you overseers, to feed the church of God, which he hath purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departing, remember, Paul was soon to be executed, shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away disciples after them. Therefore watch, and remember that by the space of 3 years I ceased not to warn everyone night and day with tears. And now, brethren, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and to give you an inheritance among them which are saved. All right. So we saw Paul warning the church before he leaves. He says, after my departing, grievous wolves are going to come in, not sparing the flock. And notice that what their mission is. It's to draw away disciples after themselves. This is the spirit of Antichrist. And I want to remind you that anti in the Greek can mean in place of Christos, Christ, Antichristos. So here we have people who are drawing away disciples after themselves, teaching false things, trying to put themselves in the place of Christ and to preach a new gospel. And we know from the book of Galatians that there is only one gospel. Paul makes it very clear, and he says, if anyone preach any other thing, let them be accursed.